Well, welcome to Ministry Conversations. My name is Clay Jacobson. I'm the director of the cooperative program, and we have with us today Dr. Jonathan Smith, director of church health. And what's your full title?
Yeah, so I'm the Director of Church Health and Growth here at Texas Baptist, and also I am the Associate Director of the Center for Church Health.
This is Ministry Conversations. Join us as we sit down with ministry experts from across Texas Baptist life and answer practical questions for effective ministry. We want to help your church fulfill the Great Commission fueled by the Great Commandment.
So, quick question.
Yeah.
Would you hire me today?
That's a trick question.
Yeah.
So what he's referencing is that about 13 years
14,
ago,
yeah.
I tried to hire you as a youth pastor when I was a senior pastor.
Yeah.
And you said no. So, no, I'm never going to try to hire you ever again. It's like strike one and you're out.
There
And
we
so,
go.
no, I would absolutely hire you for any role almost in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool. It's cool, really cool how that comes full circle. So,
Yeah, and how even though you said no, and I was, not overly bitter, we're still close friends to this day and have been, and we've talked to each other multiple times along the way. Yeah.
I've never gone through an interview process and become friends with a pastor before, and that's this is the one time I can say that that's happened. So it was really cool.
That is great.
I love
Yeah.
that. So yeah, fun personal connection.
Absolutely.
So what we're going to be talking about today is really like how does somebody know that their church needs revitalization? And so I think to give context to it, it'd be helpful to give kind of a little bit of your background and context, just so folks that are jumping in who don't know you or don't listen to your podcast,
Yeah.
which they
Yeah.
should. If you don't, you should.
That's kind.
But yeah, you mind sharing?
Sure. Yeah. I started in ministry when I was 19 years old, and so I'm 53, but I've got 33-ish, 34 years of experience, and so I think I've served the Lord's church in every way that you could imagine, except for preschool and children's minister. Though, if you're listening to the podcast today and you are a solo pastor, you are the preschool and children's minister. So right, so kind of done everything else in between. One of those experiences, though, was pastoring a church in Central Texas. To the question, how do we know if a church needs to be revitalized? Well, this one was kind of a no-brainer. The 6 months before my family moved to this small town, there was the day the church had literally $1.06 left, and there were about 25 people. And so one of the key factors, though, Clay, is I remained the pastor there for right at 13 years.
Wow.
And the end result of the Lord's work, people ask all the time, what did you do? I'm like, I listened to the Lord and practiced the Great Commission and Great Commandment. But the end result was a church that was fully revitalized. To this day, the church is doing really well. Has a whole new campus that we built. We moved from 1.7 acres in town to almost 12 acres out on the highway. Built 4 new buildings, and at the height, the church averaged about 300 people in worship, and they're doing really, really well now.
I remember visiting the original building.
Yeah. So, one of the things I want people to hear today is that church revitalization is actually possible by the power of the Holy Spirit. And before that, I had revitalized some ministries, had worked in revitalizing some areas of a church, but never had worked on a whole church. So I didn't have this big, weighty, experience or background in revitalization. I had not taken any changing institutional, realities type courses
No
or anything
adaptive
like that.
leadership
No,
courses or-
nothing like that. Nothing like that at all. And so, but because it's the Lord, if a church is going to be revitalized, it's going to be the Lord. So, yeah, and now what I get to do is to train pastors, coaches in church revitalization principles through a ministry here at Texas Baptist called PAVE, New Paths for Church Growth, that Clay is one of the primary influencers of that. Clay, myself, and one of our colleagues, Tom Howe, we wrote that practice together over a 15-month period. Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. And a lot of whiteboards.
A lot of whiteboards.
Right.
You had a few pictures from that.
Yeah.
So I think I've kept all those.
Yeah,
So,
right.
I'm thinking of, folks, maybe they've been in their church a long time,
Sure.
and things feel pretty stable.
Right.
You know, they're able to keep doing what they've historically done. You know, there's not a lot of fluctuation in membership, and they're looking around and thinking, okay, this is great, but you know, this doesn't speak to where I'm at or what we're dealing with. We're holding our own.
Yeah.
Was there any pushback that you would give to maybe somebody in that scenario, just to maybe as a word of caution?
Yeah, so I think there are some signs for a
Okay.
church that needs to be revitalized. And to some degree, the R word, as we talk it around my office, has become somewhat of a dirty word because people associate, unfortunately, the term we're using now, revitalization, with failure. Nothing could be further from the truth. So let's talk about when we say revitalization, what do we mean? Sometimes there's just a ministry that needs to be revitalized. Sometimes a pastor, you'll have a wake-up call where you say, you know what, I'm looking at our trends. In the last 3 years, our baptisms are down by 30, 40, 50, 60%. And you go, what do we do about that? Well, then you revitalize your evangelism ministry, right? Or your missional ministry. So people hear revitalization and they hear complete and total church overhaul. That may or may not be the case. So one indicator I'm looking for is this a whole church that needs to be revitalized, or is there just a missing piece or a piece that has been in decline? The other part, when it comes kind of more classically, and people are asking, should this church be revitalized? Our tendency is to look at the statistics, right? And that's important for us to do. But the first thing for us to ask is faithfulness. Are we faithful as a congregation to the great commandment, the great commission? And if the answer to that is no, I don't care the size of the church or how many baptisms there have been. It can be a growing church that needs to be revitalized when they realize that they are not faithful to the commission and the commandment. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah.
So revitalization can take on many different forms. What we're asking in revitalization really is, what wineskin are we saying?
Grape juice.
Grape juice. Sorry, I forget which podcast I'm on. Yeah, I was on a Methodist one just yesterday. Shout out. So, anyways, which wineskin do we need to work on? Because there can be a realization of, wine and wineskin. This ministry isn't working any longer. Revitalization happens around one word, and that word is new. It is new Bible study groups, new worship services, new initiatives, new missions, new planting, new churches. There's something that the Lord loves about new. And what churches tend to do when they need to be revitalized is they've held on to what worked even 3 or 4 years ago way too long.
We've never done that before.
Yeah.
This is what we've always
Yeah,
done.
sure.
So
sure.
yeah. No, that makes sense. It's comforting.
Yeah.
To
There's
have
also
something to where everything else seems to be unfamiliar as things change in the world.
Yeah.
To have something familiar.
So it's right there in the Great Commission. We just don't think of it.
Okay.
And teach them to obey everything I've commanded. All right, including the words he had just spoken, go into all the world and preach the gospel, right? So for me, revitalization is about obedience. It's about recognizing in a congregation there's an area that we're not obedient. That area might be fellowship. It might be our ministries. It might be that we never planted a church. It might be that that we're not sharing the gospel the way that we should be. And to revitalize just means to bring new health, new life, new initiatives. We all know this. Newer things grow faster. So it's just getting back to saying, hey, this has run its course. It's okay. It's been effective. It's worked. It's been great. I mean, the church that the Lord allowed me to sit in the senior pastor's seat while he turned it around, that was pretty dramatic. But the church was over 100 years old. Yeah. And it's okay to say, let's thank God for what has happened, but it's time for something new. Yeah.
So, man, so many different people thinking about like who could be listening to this run through my mind. One that's personal to me is somebody who's stepping into their first pastorate.
Oh, yeah.
And really just are grateful to be serving the Lord, grateful for the opportunity to preach and serve people, but really may not even be aware of the need or really what to evaluate around them.
Yeah.
And so what advice would you have for somebody who might find themselves in that context, whether that's been a couple weeks or they could be a couple years in and still trying to navigate like what's going on. Like,
Sure, sure. Yeah. So, first of all, if you are a first time senior pastor, about 80 to 90% of you are going to step into a church that needs to be revitalized.
oh wow,
It doesn't matter which researcher you look at, of all the nationwide researchers, even some of the research that I and you and others have done here at Texas Baptist, somewhere around 80% of churches in America are plateaued or declining in attendance. So it just makes sense that if you're a younger pastor, or if you're not, I know
Yeah.
pastors who are in their 60s that are entering their first pastorate, you need some church revitalization skill. You need some experience. So, to your question though, patience. Patience is the key to church revitalization. And as I just finished writing our PAVE manual, especially for those who are first-time senior pastors, because we've probably been sitting in a second seat for a while. And we've been saying to ourselves, oh boy, if I were in the first seat, I would have done this, I would have done that. Well, your first chair leader always knows more than you do, right? And you don't know that until you finally sit into a first chair, and then you go, oh wait, there's more here than what I thought. There's more to consider, right? So I think if I could instill or infuse one idea into someone who is a first-time senior pastor and realizes, oh my gosh, I might be in a church revitalization setting, the thing to do is to take your time. The revitalization that the Lord allowed me to lead, we didn't make any significant turn until year number 5. It was year number 7 until we were I thought, oh right, this is great momentum. And it was year 10 until we were fully revitalized. And so take your time, love the people, take care of the people, pastor them well, shepherd them well. The day will come when it's time for you to lead institutional change. But the first thing to do is to love your people, to shine a spotlight on the gospel of Christ, to be sure that the people around you actually know Christ, and then to double down on kingdom activity, evangelism, discipleship, missions. That's funny. It's all right there in the Great Commission.
yeah. I'm thinking about some of the things that as you're laying them out, you've had the opportunity to just see a lot of different churches in a lot of different contexts.
Right.
What I mean, because ultimately it's the Lord. So, can you think of any examples without getting too specific?
Sure.
I don't want to out anybody of a technique that worked for somebody you would not recommend in revitalization. This is because it's obvious that's the Lord doing this. It
Right.
wasn't that the technique was good or even recommended.
Yeah. So that's the thing. When we're dealing with these institutional churches, that my belief is that by the about 20 to 25 year mark, most churches it's time to revitalize some portions of it. It doesn't take long for a church to become institutionalized, just like it doesn't take long for a person who has been moved into an institution to be institutionalized. So it is with the church. So there is not a silver bullet approach,
Okay.
period. I wish that there were. It would be so much easier.
You can't give me 3 steps.
I
that
cannot
yeah.
give you 3 steps. If I could step in and just be like, here's the 2 or 3 things to do, it would be so much easier. But I'm convinced of this. You could have First Baptist Church of, I don't know. I don't want to call out a real city in Texas, Podunk.
by yourself.
By yourself, whatever it is. And Second Baptist Church could be right across the street and established the exact same year. And the 2 revitalization stories would be totally different. Why? Because the churches are totally different. They have a different history. They have different kind of people. They've had different kind of leaders. Some pastors have been there for a long time. Some have only been there for just a few years. And so the needs were different. So the one thing I would say to answer your question is there's just not a silver bullet. You know what it is? I'm thinking about an 80s song. It's time, love, and tenderness. It's true. It's true. It's Michael Bolton. I'm not going to sing it, though I could.
Yeah.
It is. It's time. it's loving your congregation well,
Yeah.
and it's tenderly calling them back to obey the commandment, obey the commission, and not just assume that the current ministries that you're leading, the current programming that you have, is actually making a disciple, but it's asking the deeper questions. It's pulling people aside. It's doing the research to find out, are our current ministries actually discipling people? Are they growing in their faith?
Yeah.
Are we reaching people because of our current programming? If the answer is no, it's time to revitalize.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking of a pastor who is an extreme revitalization situation, who needed to know where the families were in his community, and it was unincorporated area. So
Yeah.
there's like just hard to find research.
Sure.
So his solution for that, don't do this, was to follow the bus as it dropped off kids at the bus stops.
I know a little bit about this story.
So
Yeah.
so that he knew, and to be fair, he had called the bus barn and let them know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but it freaked the bus driver
Yeah.
driver out
Yeah.
because she didn't know who was
Right.
following their bus,
Yeah.
and stopping when they stopped,
Right.
until she got out and talked with him, and then everything was cool.
It's an
But
interesting way to do some intel.
Yes,
Not
yes.
suggested,
Not
unless
suggested.
you do all of the things that need to be done. But what a creative.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it just the and this gentleman, retirement age,
Yeah.
love his heart for doing what he needed to do to get what he needed to get,
Right.
to know who to reach in his community.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
just wild.
It is wild. Yeah. But please don't do that. Please don't do that tomorrow.
do that.
No. Yeah. Right.
We have training for you.
That's
Texas
right.
Baptist, to be more self-aware with those issues,
Yeah.
and so with Ministry Safe. So, we may need to cut that. I'm thinking about not knowing who might view this podcast.
Right.
I'm thinking about folks who have been a member of their church 15, 20 years.
Okay.
They have a pastor who's come in who's talking about revitalization.
Right.
And it really just sounds like another reason to change the worship style in their church, because they saw that happen
Yeah.
25, 30 years ago.
Sure.
And there's just a lot of maybe questions, mistrust, maybe concern
Sure.
around what is it that they're trying to lead here in this church, and
Yep.
and what do I need to think about as a lay person and consider if in regard to this topic for my church.
That's great. A lot of times these churches need to be revitalized. The ones that have had significant decline, plateau or decline in their attendance. Not that the attendance is everything, but it is something. A lot of times those churches have grown a little gray. I'm growing gray like really faster than what I had anticipated, and I think part of that is being friends with you. Yeah. But other than that, so as churches grow gray, there's this amazing question out there. I was listening to a pastor on a podcast the other day who is one of our coaches and was talking about PAVE principles on a different podcast, and he was talking about one of the things that he did when he was early on at his church. And to be sure, his church has grown from like 120 to about 500 or 600 in a suburban area the last 15 years underneath his leadership. Whole new campus, similar story to what I told earlier. He sat with grandparents. I am one. I'm 53, but I'm a grandparent to two grandkids. And he asked this question: what would it take for your grandkids to beg you to come to church? And he said it moved the needle, right?
Yeah.
And so that is such a valid question, because it speaks not only to the character of the church, kind of the ethos of the church, what the culture of the church is like, but also speaks to the next generation. It's very common in the consulting side of the work that I do to go to a church and to find that not that there are just a few children and youth, but there are absolutely zero. That happens very, very often.
Okay.
It can be really hard once you've reached that point to gain back any families who have children. So before you get to that, if you're listening to this today, you're a lay person, let me just ask you, What would it take for your children to beg you to go to church? What would it take for your grandchildren to beg you to go to church? Those are the changes that need to be made for the church to ultimately live on. Because here we have these faithful people, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm 53, but I've been giving to my church for all these years. But people in their 60s, 70s, 80s who have given their lives, like they paid for the pews we're sitting on, right?
Yeah.
But you know what they want more than anything else? They want to know that their church is going to outlive them. So that'd be a question I'm often posing to church members. Don't you want to see the next generation follow Christ? And it's kind of like, well, yeah, that would be nice, but what's the sacrifice that I'm going to have to make? Well, when you think of it personally, is your son and daughter going to church? Are your grandkids going to church? What changes would be necessary for your church to grow younger so it can outlive you?
Yeah. Yeah. Your legacy lives on
That's
because
it.
it's kingdom legacy.
That's right.
It's not just a personal one.
Right.
No, that's great. I'm also thinking about guys that and gals that are on staff at a church that are not the lead pastor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but want to see maybe some growth in movement that hasn't happened in a while. They love their church. They're not looking to undermine their pastor, but they're wanting to see God move in some new ways.
Yeah.
How would you advise somebody to navigate that? Because it's a little different when you're not the person who's setting the pace.
Yeah, look, I was a youth pastor for 13 years, as a worship pastor, discipleship pastor, missions pastor. Sounds like I change churches every 2 years, but I've only served 5 churches in my career. I just kind of moved seats or added on other areas or whatever. This is what I know. If you're a second chair leader, you do not have the ability to revitalize the entire congregation, but you can affect it. You can revitalize your ministry area. I served at a church where our student ministry that I led was literally half of the congregation. Like by the numbers, half the congregation was teenagers, right? What did that lead to? That led to people realizing, oh my gosh, we've got to grow in other areas, right? We had to grow in children's ministry because we had a lot of youth, but no one behind them. We didn't have many senior adults. It was a really interesting set of circumstances. So I remember trying to lead revitalization before that word was around from a second chair seat. And all I did was injure myself and injure my lead pastor. But then it dawned on me one day, someday God may place me in that senior pastor seat. It's not time for me yet, but lead with excellence the ministry that God has told me to lead now, and see where even just leading that ministry with excellence might lead the church. In other words, you can bash your head against the wall trying to even get the pastor to change, trying to get the church to change, or you can lead the change that's necessary that God has called you to for this season. Do so and do it well.
Yeah.
But not many people who are driven, who are highly driven. I'm a high D, if you know the disc, I'm a high D, high I. And people who are driven like that can find that to be enough.
Yeah.
But find it to be enough. Your sufficiency is found in Christ, not in the size of your church, even the impact of your church. So lead with excellence the ministry that God has called you for now. But think like, one of my axioms for leadership is think like on the org chart, the person who is above you.
Okay.
What decisions are they making? Why? Question it in your own mind. Question and ask, if I were in that seat, I'd make it this way. And then ask, help me understand this decision that's been made. I want to be prepared to be a better leader and maybe a different leader at some point. So help me understand what decisions are being made and why after the fact. Don't say no in the moment. Do what you are asked and told to do, but later come back and ask for an explanation as to why. Most leaders will thoughtfully give you that answer. Think like the people who are above you in the org chart, but treat the people who are behind you in the org chart as equal. In other words, your ministry assistant, if you have one, your lay leaders, help them see that it's worthy of them to ask, why is Jonathan leading this way? Why is he making these decisions? Bring them to the table to help make important decisions. What you're doing is you're developing leaders.
Yeah, we need more of those in
We
our
need more of those.
churches.
That's a
Yeah.
natural way to develop leaders.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I know one of the things that you're really good at, and I love that you do this on the regular, is giving practical,
Yeah.
tangible, either next steps, tips, things that people can implement. And so, do you mind sharing a little bit of just resources that are available for folks that are needing to connect, needing to start, maybe even need to go down this road and discover what all this is?
Sure. Let me give just one thought before we go to the actual resources. The best thing I know for you, Pastor, to do if you're wanting to lead church revitalization is certainly you be prayed up and have people around you be prayed up. But here it is: lead the mission. Lead the mission. Look, if you're going to be in a revitalization seat, you're no longer kind of the chief shepherd to some degree. You can't be the chief chaplain. Your role has got to be lead missionary and lead evangelist and lead disciple maker. They might still want you to go to every hospital visit. You do all that you can, but you've got to shift your thinking and your practice into outward, upward, right? Sharing the gospel, be seen in your community, be at football games. Like, you have got to shift your thinking and your practice from lead chaplain to lead missionary. And when you do that, and when the people once again taste and see that the mission is good, the church will start to turn in ways that you cannot explain. To your exact question, so I'd invite any of you, even if you're not a part of Texas Baptist, to go to txb.org. That's our Texas Baptist website. TXB, like texasbaptist.org/PAVE, P-A-V-E. PAVE is our statewide church revitalization, church health and growth strategy that there are tips and tricks and articles and just ideas and opportunities to come to a PAVE preview where for a half a day you just hear about what PAVE is all about, get a few revitalization principles. Would love for you to be a part of that. Also, you can find the PAVE podcast there. You can find the PAVE podcast on any of the places that you would find a podcast.
Apple. So, yeah.
Apple, Pandora, all Spotify, all the places. Just put in PAVE Podcast. And what we do there is we talk with pastors who are in the middle of it. Like, every now and then I'll bring in someone who is a revitalization expert, but it's mostly Texas Baptist pastors who are in the midst of leading revitalization, and they just share their success stories, the kingdom success stories that God has brought. Or we're going to talk about things like the one I'm doing tomorrow. How does tenure of a pastor in revitalization, what's the connection? Is that important? Is that a big deal? So we talk about the practical steps of church revitalization on the PAVE podcast.
Nice.
But the PAVE ministry is here for you, even if it's just that you're kind of learning from a distance, or if you are part of a cohort that we're going to walk you through a revitalization strategy with a coach for a year, and then give you resources for literally 5 more years. We have 5 years worth of resources for you once your church takes the revitalization turn to continue to help you, your church help you be a catalyst for church health and growth in your local context.
It's good stuff. Yeah. As I'm thinking about folks that are wrestling with that, I think a lot of people just need hope.
Yeah.
And so, as you're looking at the landscape right now,
Right.
especially Texas,
Sure.
what gives you hope when you see the stats and when you see when you consult with churches?
Yeah.
who struggle?
What gives me hope, I'm going to tell you 4 or 5 really fast stories, is a church, a historic African-American church in the shadows of downtown San Antonio that had baptized just 1 or 2 people each year and put a few revitalization principles in place and baptized 20 people in a row. What gives me hope is a church along the coastline in South Texas that had not baptized anyone in 6.5 years, 6.5 years, and grabbed a few revitalization PAVE principles in particular. 10 days after he left a PAVE training, he had their first baptism, and they baptized about 20 people since then. That's only been about a year. What gives me hope is a senior adult pastor who his church was 200, 250, but had been about 400 or 500 and had been in decline under his leadership for a decade. And one day he woke up and thought, what do I do? He called me crying, didn't know what the next steps were, was broken, was frustrated. And all he needed was an assimilation strategy because all of the guests were coming. He just didn't know how to attach them to the church. And the church is back up to 300 or 400 people. What gives me hope is a pastor who was a first-time senior pastor, and he was 24. Man, he didn't know what to do next. He was 24. He had another staff member who I think was 23, another one who was 21, and a secretary who was 76. And the church was almost all senior adults. Like he wasn't just the grandson of the church members. He was kind of like the great grandson. That's how they treated him of the church members. And that church is vibrant and growing because they got serious about taking the gospel to people in their area. What gives me hope is that the Lord is doing it. He is doing it. He's taking people who will pastors who are and lay people, deacons who will laser focus on the Great Commission, the Great Commandment, will be willing to stay and do the hard thing and lead change, and then 10 years later, it's a whole new church. I didn't know that. I didn't know that a whole new church was going to be born. Same name, but new location, hundreds of people baptized in that 10-year span and beyond. And so when the Lord says, behold, I am doing something new, that can happen in a church that's declining or even dying because it's the Lord's church. That's what gives me hope is I see the guys around it who have the courage to even just to try. And once the church turns back to the Great Commission once again and really takes it seriously, it's amazing what God does.
The gospel,
Yeah.
It still saves.
The gospel is the mission, and if people would just live and be more concerned with disciple making, evangelism, missions, church planting, instead of holding on to the programs of the past, be amazing what God will do in your church.
It's good. It's good. It's good. Are there any trends that you're seeing in that vein that seem to indicate that there might be some cool stuff kind of happening that is a pretty big shift?
Yeah, here in Texas Baptist Life, since the pandemic, everyone kind of bottomed out in the pandemic as far as attendance and baptisms. But what we're seeing in Texas Baptist since then is an increase in baptisms. Of course, we're deeply connected to the Southern Baptist Convention. After more than 20 years of decline in baptisms in Southern Baptist churches, that is on the rise again. There's something that's happening. I don't have my exact finger on all of it just yet, or the pulse of it exactly, but yeah, there is a trend right now of churches that are remaining because we're losing churches left and right. I know of 20, 25 churches that are in jeopardy of closing their doors, many of them First Baptist churches within the next year. My good friend Tom Rayner wrote and says all the time that half of the churches in America are in jeopardy of closing their doors the next 5 years. But God is either putting new, restored, replanted churches in those same places, or he's just revitalizing churches. And so there's this amazing increase in baptisms right now that I'm seeing. That's the trend that I see right now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's really encouraging.
Yeah.
So if there's one practice or anybody listening, whether they're a layperson or a staff member, could put into place tomorrow that could start them on a journey towards revitalization.
Yeah.
Both spiritually, maybe I'm leading too much, but maybe a spiritual practice, and a tangible, hands-on, I'm going to go and live out my faith practice. What would this be?
I'm just going to speak from my own experience. I remember interviewing someone. It was not you, by the way. It was a different church. But this pastor, no, it really wasn't. We were hiring. We were looking to hire an associate pastor at a church that I served, and he gave a great answer. He was asked, "Tell us about your spiritual life," and he said, it's good for me to intake 14 chapters of Scripture every day. And I just sat back and thought, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible disciple of Jesus, right? 14 chapters every day. It's good for me to get 14 verses in every day, but different people are built in different kind of ways. God bless him. He is an amazing Christian person and doing great things in God's kingdom, still following his work. Most of us just are not going to be quite there. Here's what I find. You know what really drives my spiritual life? It's my neighbor. I'm not going to say his name. My neighbor across the street, 3 years ago, we didn't love one another. We didn't know one another. We love one another now. I go to his backyard all the time and hang out with him and his family while they have a good time and watching sports. He comes to my backyard. We hang out. We cut each other's grass. We do all kind of things together. Now, we've been to ball games together, and it drives my spiritual life is my buddy across the street who I know needs Christ. If you want to see your church revitalized, nothing will do it faster than you listening to the admonitions of the Lord. He left the glory of heaven to come to this earth to do one thing, to seek and save the lost. You can be that shepherd who goes after, who walks away from the 99 temporarily to go after the one. And if you recognize in the state of Texas, if all of us who are followers of Jesus would share faith in such a way that one person would come to faith in Christ every year, within 3 years, the entire state of Texas would be followers of Jesus. If we would share the gospel and make disciples. I feel like I beat this drum all the time, but what you can do as a layperson, a deacon, a pastor, a bishop, whatever you are, this is God's will for your life. Be a disciple, make a disciple, share the gospel. It is God's will for your life. Be a disciple, make a disciple, share the gospel. That is church revitalization.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Ministry Conversations. Ministry Conversations is made possible through your giving to the Texas Baptist Cooperative Program. Have a topic you want to hear about? Let us know by emailing news@texasbaptist.org.